I think, Muhammad, it's not just me who looks forward to hearing your voice in the group, but I think other members also feel happy to hear your voice. Inshallah ta'ala, everyone is doing well. I would like to know how to say your name, dear sister, but I'm afraid to say it wrong. Is it Maries?
Yes, it's Mary's.
Okay, dear. All right. Welcome, my dear.
Thank you.
Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. I remind you to have a sincere intention in your heart, seeking reward from Allah Ta'ala by attending the lesson. Our topic today is about the purificatory bath, or referred to as Ghusl. Among the conditions for a valid prayer is for the person to be clear of the ritual impurity. So you learned among the conditions of the prayer is to have ablution wudu. And we already talked about ablution wudu. We spoke about the integrals of wudu. And we spoke about the invalidators of wudu. Also, among the conditions for the prayer to be valid is for the person to be clear of the major ritual impurity. We will mention what are the reasons that cause that for the person to be on the major ritual impurity. So then a condition for the validity of the prayer is also for the person to be clear from the major ritual impurity. This is referred to as al-hadath al-akbar in Arabic. How does one do that? How does one clear oneself of the major ritual impurity? This is by taking the obligatory bath, referred to as al-ghusl al-wajib in Arabic. So it is the whole body wash, the obligatory purificatory bath. I'm mentioning here obligatory because there are washes that are recommended, sunnah, okay, to do. But we're not talking about these recommended sunnah. We're talking about now the one that is obligatory to take before prayer if the person was in the state of major ritual impurity. So what are the occurrences that render this whole body wash, this obligatory ghusl wajib? Remember, we said there are things that necessitate for one to take this obligatory whole body wash. These are 5 matters. This means if any of these 5 matters happen, the person would have to take the obligatory wash, the whole body wash, the obligatory ghusl, before this person can pray. Because if any of these 5 matters happen, it means the person is now on the major ritual impurity, and to clear oneself from that, one is required to take the purificatory bath, the obligatory purificatory bath, which is al-ghusl al-wajib, the obligatory whole body wash. Okay? So, what are then the 5 occurrences that render the whole body wash an obligation? 2 of these 5 are common between males and females, okay? They might happen to males and to females, and 3 are specific to females. So, the first of these occurrences is the emission of mani. You already know now what mani is. It is the sexual spermal fluid of the male and the corresponding sexual fluid of the female. So if the mani is emitted, if one's own mani is emitted, then one would have to perform the whole body wash, the obligatory whole body wash, before this person can pray. Now, we also mentioned that mani has characteristics that one can know whether this is mani or not. And among the attributes of mani, among the signs of mani, is that it exits in spurts, okay? And it exits with pleasure, and it has the smell of dough when wet and egg white when dry. So if the person's mani is emitted, then this person would have to perform the obligatory whole body wash first before this person can pray. This is the first occurrence that renders the whole body wash an obligation. The second one is sexual intercourse. Notice each one was mentioned separately because mani might be emitted without having sexual intercourse, and one might have sexual intercourse and mani might not come out, okay? Mani might not be emitted. So the second occurrence then that renders the whole body wash an obligation is sexual intercourse. Now, as to the three that are specific to females, but before I mention that, when the couple, okay, when the couple has sexual intercourse, it does not mean that afterwards, right away, they have to perform this whole body wash. No, as long as they perform it before they pray, okay? So they do not leave the time of the prayer exit before they pray. No, they perform it before they pray. Okay, now the three that are specific to females, the first of these three is the menses. Menses is the blood that comes out of the uterus of a woman, not due to illness nor childbirth, okay? So menses is then the blood that comes out of the female's uterus. When the menses is over, that is when the woman performs the whole body wash before she prays. Okay, so it is the termination of the menses bleeding that renders the whole body wash an obligation upon the woman. All right, now I'm going to mention some few details pertaining to the menses, because these are important for females to know. The minimum duration of menses is 1 day and 1 night. This means it is 24 hours. The minimum duration of menses is 24 hours. So if the female then has bleeding for a minimum of 24 hours, she knows then, okay, this was her menses. When the blood terminates, she performs the whole body wash, the obligatory whole body wash before she prays. Now, what if the blood stops after, for example, 3 or 4 hours? And we said the minimum is 24 hours. So in case her bleeding stops after 3 hours, she does not see blood coming out anymore. In this case, she does not ignore the prayer and say, but this is my menses time, so I will just wait and leave out the time of the prayer. No. Now that the bleeding has stopped, she says, okay, this is not menses because it's not the minimum duration yet, because we said the minimum duration of menses is 24 hours. So if her bleeding stops after 3 hours, she performs istinja, not the whole body wash, because it has not been yet the minimum duration of menses. So for now, she is not judging it as her menses because the bleeding stopped after 3 hours. So if this bleeding stopped after 3 hours, she does not let the time of the prayer exit without praying. She says, okay, then this is not menses. She performs istinja, not the obligatory whole body wash. She performs istinja, she makes wudu, and she prays. We talked about istinja yesterday, right? So she performs istinja, she does ablution, wudu, and she prays. Now, if afterwards, after let's say 1 hour, 2 hours, her bleeding starts again. While this bleeding is happening, and it is the time where she usually has her menses, while this bleeding is happening, she says, okay, she does not pray now because it started bleeding again, and it is the time when she usually has her menses. So she says, okay, this bleeding is happening now again. She stops praying, and she sees now. She says, okay, before, how many hours was this bleeding? Let's say, for example, we said she bled for 3 hours, and then the bleeding stopped. So she counts those 3 hours, and with the bleeding that is happening now, when the minimum, which is 24 hours of bleeding, occurs, and then the bleeding stops after the minimum of 24 hours of bleeding has occurred. Afterwards, when the bleeding stops, now she judges the bleeding as what? Now it has exceeded the minimum of the duration of menses, which is 24 hours. So now she judges it as her menses bleeding, and when it terminates, now she performs the obligatory whole body wash before she prays. Is this clear? Does anybody have a question about what we just mentioned? So then, okay. So then the minimum duration of menses is 24 hours. If the blood stopped before reaching 24 hours, she does not judge it as menses. She makes istinja, ablution to pray. When the bleeding has gone beyond 24 hours, she knows it was menses. And in this case, when the bleeding terminates, she performs the obligatory whole body wash, okay? And then she prays. So we mentioned the minimum duration of menses. What is the maximum duration of menses? The maximum duration is 15 days, okay? 15 days and nights, 15. This means if she sees the bleeding for 6 days and then the bleeding stopped, has it reached the minimum duration? If the bleeding was for 6 days, if the bleeding was for 6 days and the minimum duration of menses is 24 hours, has this reached the minimum duration of bleeding? Yes, right? If she had bleeding for 6 days, if she had bleeding for 6 days, and we said the minimum duration is 24 hours, it means she judges this blood now as menses blood. So if after 6 days her bleeding terminates, what does she do? She says, okay, this was the menses, so she performs the obligatory whole body wash to pray. What if after 2 days she sees blood again? Okay, let's say for 2 days there was no blood, so she was praying. What if after 2 days she sees a little bit of blood again? What does she judge this blood as? It has not exceeded the maximum time of her menses, because the maximum duration of menses is what? 15 days. And in her case, she saw bleeding for, what did we say, 6 days? And then it stopped for 2 days. And then she saw bleeding again. It is still within 15 days. Okay, it has not gone yet beyond 15 days. It is still between 15 days, within 15 days. So she judges this blood that came out after 2 days as menses. So she says, okay, the menses is not over yet. But she was not wrong with what she did, which is that she made ghusl, the whole body wash, and she prayed. She was not wrong by that, because when the bleeding stopped, she needs to do that. But now that it came again after 2 days and it's still within the time of the menses, it has not yet extended beyond the maximum duration of her menses, she says, okay, this is still menses. And when this bleeding stops, what would she have to do now? perform ghusl, whole body wash again before she prays, okay? Because she says, okay, this whole time it was still menses, even though there was a break in between, but she still counts it all as menses. Actually, I'll tell you, dear. So she counts it all as menses because it had not reached the maximum duration of menses. In her case, the bleeding had stopped. And when the bleeding had stopped, she is to do what she did, which is to perform the whole body wash and pray. So she was right in doing what she did, okay? But since after 2 days she saw bleeding again, and it was still within the time of the menses, it has not reached the maximum duration of menses, she judges this bleeding as menses. So she says, okay, all this time she was still having her menses time. And when this bleeding now stops, she performs the whole body wash, obligatory whole body wash again, and she prays, okay? So during that time when there was bleeding, she does not pray. But since it stopped for her, she thought, okay, it's over, and she performed the whole body wash to pray. As for when the female has her menses during the month of Ramadan, she does not fast, okay? While she's having her menses, she does not fast. However, after Ramadan, she does have to make up the days that she missed, okay? She does not have to make them up right away after Ramadan is over. No, because she did not fast because she had an excuse, because she had her period. And when the female has her period, her menses, she does not fast, okay? So since she did not fast due to an excuse, a religious excuse, she does not have to make up these days right away after Eid. Rather, she has to make them up before the next Ramadan comes, okay? Before next Ramadan comes. All right, so we mentioned then the minimum duration of menses and the maximum duration of menses. So when the menses terminates, okay, the female then would have to perform the obligatory whole body wash before she can pray. The fourth occurrence that renders the whole body wash obligatory, and this occurrence is also specific to females, it is the postpartum bleeding, okay? The postpartum bleeding. This is the blood that is emitted from the uterus of a woman after giving birth. So this is the blood that is emitted from the uterus of the female after giving birth. The minimum duration of this bleeding, of postpartum bleeding, is a moment. So it's very short, a moment. She counts that as postpartum bleeding. If it stopped, she makes the obligatory whole body wash before she prays. What is the maximum duration of the postpartum bleeding? The maximum duration is 60 days. Okay, the maximum duration of postpartum bleeding is 60 days. So the termination of postpartum bleeding necessitates the obligatory whole body wash. So then she performs the obligatory whole body wash before she prays. We mentioned 4 occurrences, but we said they are 5. So what is the 5th one? The 5th one is childbirth. Notice this is mentioned also as one by itself, because it might happen that the female gives birth and does not have postpartum bleeding afterwards, even though with many females, they do have postpartum bleeding after giving birth. Yet, still, it might happen that a female gives birth and no postpartum bleeding comes out afterwards. All right, and this did happen, and that's why the scholars mentioned that. So in this case, if she gave birth and no postpartum bleeding came afterwards, in this case, she also performs the obligatory whole body wash before she prays. Okay? So these are the 5 occurrences that render the whole body wash an obligation. Other than these 5, if none of these 5 occurs, the person does not perform a whole body wash with the intention of the obligatory ghusl. One can take just a shower like that, but one would not take a shower with the intention of lifting the major ritual impurity, would not make the intention of the obligatory whole body wash. Okay? Now, what are the integrals of the whole body wash? There are 2. Okay? There are 2 integrals for the whole body wash. The first of these 2 is the intention. Remember, we said the place of the intention is in the heart. So the person does not have to say anything with the tongue. So the first integral is then the intention. One can intend to remove the major ritual impurity, which is referred to as al-hadath al-akbar in Arabic, or an intention similar to that. Okay, so one can intend in the heart that one is clearing oneself from the major ritual impurity. Or one can intend to perform the obligatory ghusl, the obligatory one, okay? Because we said there are ghusl that are recommended. But in this case, the person is performing the obligatory ghusl. So this is also a valid intention. So the person intends that in his heart. For example, of a valid intention is to intend to clear oneself of the major ritual impurity or to perform the obligatory ghusl. All right? Now, when does one have this intention? When the water touches one's body. Because if one washed, for example, one's head, and then started washing one's body, and then one remembered the intention, then one would have to rewash the head. Why? Because when the head was washed, one did not have the intention, did not establish the intention. So one has the intention when the water first touches the body. And the second integral is to wash the whole entire body, the apparent parts of the entire body. Okay, the apparent parts of the entire body, head to toe. One washes the whole body and hair. In this case, even if the male has a thick beard, he still here makes sure that the water reaches inside to the skin. Remember when we spoke about ablution, we said if his beard is thick, he washes the outer part, okay? But when talking about the obligatory ghusl, here in this case, even if his beard is thick, he has to make sure that the water reaches down to his skin. So he washes the hair, even if it is thick, and the skin. And here again, the person makes sure that one does not have anything on one's body that prevents the water from reaching the part that has to be washed. Okay, because the water has to reach all the apparent parts of one's body. So when the water touches one's body, any part of one's body, one establishes the intention in the heart and one washes the whole body, okay? Hair and skin, whatever is on one's body. And make sure there's nothing on the body that prevents the water from reaching the skin. And Allah Ta'ala knows best.